thank you all for sticking around for this Q&A session. I was able to jot down some of the questions as they came in. So hopefully we'll get a couple of those answered. So Dr. Hastings, one question that came up from Genevieve was that what's one thing you wish you would have started doing sooner for your career?
Good question. You know, on one hand, I wish I would have figured it out sooner because, well, especially as a woman, you know, by the time I was like finishing my requirements, I was having babies and it just like got really hard to balance. But at the same time, I really think I also needed the space between undergraduate and grad school to experience that life that I was talking about and grow, because I really think that fueled my work later and made me just more mature and gave me perspectives, just having been around, you know, different people and in a different environment and cultures and appreciate, you know, differences. I mean, I was in New York City and coming from college in Indiana. And so I really am grateful actually for those years. And but I think that I also wasn't sure originally, and I wasn't unsure for long, but if I was going to get my master's or my doctorate. And so originally I kind of started off with my master's and thinking I'll figure it out. But then as soon as I started, I realized I wanted to get my doctor as I learned more about, you know, what you can do with that and based on what I wanted to do. So in a way, I kind of wish I'd figured that out a little sooner. I really loved the program at Pepperdine. It was fantastic. But it's, you know, it's 2-year master's and then 4-year doctorate, 5 if you're having a baby in the middle. And then, but you know, there are some programs that are, if you know, it's like 5 years, you know, it's kind of built in together. So, so I guess timing wise, but really there's not much I would change. I've really worked with a lot of different demographics at this point, and even through my internships. I mean, I did a year of internship specializing in child and parenting work. And so I can still, even though I specialize in sports psychology, you know, in my private practice, I see, you know, I can see kids. And I also did a lot of internship work doing neuropsychological testing and psych testing. And that's something I definitely use. And I think that I'm almost grateful. I'm grateful that I knew I wanted to work in sports, but I'm also kind of glad I didn't um, only focus on that my entire, you know, educational career and training, because I think I feel like I'm much more well-rounded. And you know, in my job, even with the Rams, it's like everything comes up. It's not just, you know, one area. So even though I specialize in sports psychologist and I'm working with athletes, well, I'm dealing with everything, you know, all different types of diagnoses and symptoms. I'm dealing with, you know, sometimes people come to me about a family member, all different, you know, ages. So I'm really grateful to have had that training. And even the psych testing, you know, sometimes, so if somebody's like wondering if they might have ADHD, or if the training staff is, or like if somebody messes up and gets a DUI, um, that is mandated, like the league mandates that they get an assessment. And it's been for a while that every club has to refer out, and the assessor is hired by the NFL, not the team, which makes sense. So there's no bias. But if it's something, you know, not, if it's like more of a screening, or if it's something like our club just wants to know, they can send them to me and I can do that. So, you know, I probably answered exactly opposite of what you were asking. I don't think there's much I would change. And only the uncontrollable in terms of when I have my kids. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for the answer. Oh,
Answers.
sorry, Genevieve. Yeah, so I think we got room for a few more questions. I know, Dr. Hastings, you have another meeting to attend. So if we don't get to all of them, I hope that we can send the ones that we don't get answered in an email, maybe get a brief
Of
answer for
course.
those. So
Yeah.
next question was from Alice. Dr. Magical, who is one of our professors here and faculty advisors for the club, she asked us some of the question, which was how has COVID shifted your work or not with dealing with issues with athletes and your own personal experience with working through COVID?
Yeah, great question. And I will try to make this a condensed answer because that could be a very long answer. This past year, as it was for everyone, was very unique and challenging, and a lot of kind of flying by the seats of our pants, you know, problem solving. And when it started, nobody knew kind of how big this thing was or how long it would go on. And so with the rest of the world, we kind of like paused, or it'd be like, okay, these couple of weeks, we're going to pause, or we're going to, and then when it was time for OTAs in the spring, it was still going on. And then everybody started to realize, okay, we actually have to put some things in place here because this thing has some legs. So that's when it was decided that OTAs would be virtual last year. And the players got, if they didn't already have their own some sort of home gym or workout equipment, they were supplied with that so they could keep up with their workouts. Team meetings were virtual. And then, they have a bit of time off before training camp. And it was like right down to the wire, if training camp was going to be allowed to happen, to be in person, and to have fans. The NFL put enough in place by that time for teams to where they had a testing facility separate from the building on site for every team. So the teams were divided into 3 tiers. So tier 1 being people who have direct interaction with players regularly. Tier 2, you're in the building with players, you may or may not have direct interaction with them regularly. And tier 3 would be like the corporate office, which is another building. And so tier 1 people and some tier 2 were tested every day. Players were tested every day, which was very challenging. Even days that I wasn't at the facility, I had to go up there and get tested. And but that was the only way we were allowed to have this season, and to keep that in place very strictly. Our building was completely modified to be COVID friendly, and they had separate entrances and then some only for exit. There were no touch, doorways where you would just wave. They put something where you'd wave your hand. You would have to do a screening on your phone before being let in every day. And then they would take your temperature. So, all sorts of things. The bathrooms were, and the like refrigerators for drinks were all you opened with your foot at the bottom. And the break room was closed, which that was a huge disappointment for people because that's really where people mingle and come together and eat and build relationships, on within the team and everyone else. So there were a lot of changes. And then when California kind of retightened their restrictions again, was that like November, I think? Then they said, okay, we got to limit the number of people in the building at all. So if anyone is able to do their work virtually, then you need to do it. So then I started just meeting with people virtually or in my office. It just couldn't be on site. And since like if it were somebody from the team, we knew we were both getting tested every day, so we weren't really worried about the in-person stuff as much. But yeah, and then we created a COVID task force within the team, which was 8 of us. It was like our head trainer, our team physician, me, our director of player engagement, and a couple of others. And we met regularly. In the beginning, it was like few times, like every week, and then it spaced out a little bit. But just having to anticipate situations, being on the road, like, okay, how are we going to travel? What are we going to do if this happens, if a player gets it? And I think our team did really well. We did have a few positive cases, but nothing that really shook up our team in a way that I think impacted our um the outcomes of our games, I don't think. But it was a challenge. I mean, it was really not to minimize anyone else's challenges with this, but it was a challenge. And personally, not only was I trying to do all that in new ways, but I have 3 kids at home who were doing virtual learning and trying to kind of deal with that homeschool situation as well. So, yeah, it was a lot, but we made it.
All right. So I know time is kind of dwindling down. So if you have time to answer one more question, we can
Let's
go
do
ahead
one
and
more.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay, just double checking. So this question comes from our lovely PR chair, David. He was asking, did you reach out to the Rams yourself, or did you work through the organization first?
Um, to get my job,
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
um, I, after they moved out here, they were looking for a team psychologist, and so they came looking. I have in my favor, my office is within the area. They're in Moore Park, I'm in Westlake Village. And they heard about me from a colleague, based on what they were looking for and based on what I do and what I can offer. And so then I met a few times with a few different people. And then I was hired. That was, and you may have seen, about a year and a half. No, when it was it 2 years ago or 1 year ago? 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago, the league really tightened their qualifications, requirements. And so every team was mandated to have a team clinician, which wasn't the case before. Even though most teams had one, I think there were 3 that didn't. Um, but they also, then there was a list of qualifications that each team's clinician had to meet. And so some of those positions were reconfigured, or new people were hired. Um, but that's something to keep in mind too, because most sports, you see the NBA is prioritizing mental health now. They have their own director, and baseball's kind of always been pretty good about that. And now football is taking it very seriously, and so that was part of the revamping of the CBA, that fall. Was they wanted certain things in place, and it's provided for all players, and without limit. And which, again, I think is such a great example for the rest of the sport world at any level.
Sorry, thought I muted myself there. Yeah, so thank you for the answer, and we really appreciate your time. We can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your day to come meet with us and just share your experiences and answer some of these questions. We just really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, by all means, feel free, if you have more questions, to reach out and keep in touch and let me know how your journey's going.
We'll do. We'll send out. We'll have Taylor send out an email thanking you, and
Good.
also with maybe a Word document with the other 9 or 10 questions we have. So we'll send
All
that to
right.
you when we can.
Do it before the season starts.
Will do. All right.
All right. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
you.